Hi and welcome to Linus Napoleonic Shipyard. This is my YouTube channel where I do battle reports, ship builds, tutorials and tell a bit of history. This channel is focused mostly on Napoleonic era ships in 1 to 700 scale. And since my fleet for our games is British, most ships in this channel so far are also British. The main thing for us is immersion though. We try to achieve that by putting a bit of extra time into our ship models, the sea mat, smoke effects. We did some LED smoke effects that we really like. It's brought a lot of the action, like we light them up when the ship is firing and then we turn them off and then we swap them for other smoke eventually once the firing is done. Terrain. Spent some time on terrain, both making our own and buying from some gents here in the community. Actually have a couple of more islands coming up, hopefully, and really looking forward to that. We have the mizzen, main and 4 yards on the lower mast. The top yards is the ones in the middle and above the fighting tops. At the very top we have the topgallant yards. The spanker gaff and boom are at the stern, where the spanker sail goes. The bowsprit yard and the dolphin striker are of course on the bowsprit. A way to make a ship model at the 107 scale stand out is spending some time on the rigging I found. There are a few good tutorials out there already, but it never hurts with another one, I think. So this is mine. A lot of the rigging I do is inspired by historical paintings. Like I would find the actual ship and look at the historical paint. They're not always accurate, but it's something to follow. And I also use a book called Rigging Period Ship Models by Lennart Pettersson. That's really good, really clear illustrations that you can follow when you want to rig your ship. I guess he did that one for ships in a larger scale, and a lot of the rigging might be a little bit too hard in 1/700 scale, but it is a good guide to follow and you learn a lot of the terminology using that. He's also written another book that I also really recommend, and that's Rigging Period Fore and Aft Craft, and that's for ships with that type of rig. I mean, if you don't have them, get them, because that's gonna help you a lot when you try to rig the ships. They have really clear illustrations in them. I think I mentioned that earlier, so you can just switch to the page that you need, and then following the illustration you know exactly where to run your thread. Okay, more on that later. We usually play our games using house rules, based on the Black Seals rules by Warlord games. At times we also add from other systems like Signal Close Action and Kiss Me Hardy rule sets. These are older rule sets, but really good. I recommend like spreading out and like taking rules from them. We have a rule for towing ships and so on. It makes the games more fun. I usually use a couple of different threads when rigging. The first is the thread that you get with the models from Warlord games. You can also buy this thread separately from them. It's a thicker black thread. I find it works really well for the standing rigging. Of course, the standing rigging, if you don't know, the standing rigging refers to the network of ropes, fixed ropes and cables, and there's like chains, and this is to support and stabilize the masts and other vertical structures on the ship, so they don't move too much when it's a hard wind blowing. It's like shrouds, stays, capstans and so on. When swaying and collapsing under the weight of the sails, also in rough seas. And these are distinguished from the running rigging, which involves the ropes that are used for adjusting the sails. And there's like lines like halyards, for raising and lowering the sails, the sheets for controlling the angle of the sails, the braces for adjusting the position of the yards, and also the horizontal spars that support the sails. Yeah, so the running rigging is actually what allows the sailors of the ship to trim, adjust and take down sails as needed during sailing. So you have those two different type of rigging. Most people, I think, and I'm probably going to mention that later, end up just doing the standing rigging, which is totally fine. It's all up to your taste. But for me, I really wanted, I mean, I can't make it historically correct at this scale, or I guess someone did, but it's going to be a lot of work. So I'm just going to be happy with the way I do it. And this model is just an example of the way I do it. I always end up doing it a bit different for each model. And that's also giving them a bit of individuality. So, well, on to the actual rigging. So sometimes I like the mizzen, main and preventer stays. Those are the really thick mainstays. They're the thicker stays. They're going from just below the fighting tops. And I do this by doubling the thread provided by Warlord games and gluing it with gel super glue. This is actually the only glue I use for rigging, as the gel stays in place much better than normal cyanoacrylate glue. I think I said that right. And you can see that here. I'm gluing it together, and then after the fact you might want to start, since it might end up a little bit shiny with that glue, I actually use an acrylic marker. I use the ones from AK in this video, just to add a bit of color on top of the glue, the dried glue, so it's not so shiny, the thread. I don't bother tying these lines in place because they're so thick. I just glue them. I found that works just fine. It holds in place and it looks good, I think. It can be a bit fiddly gluing, so you know, stay with it, be persistent. For the running rigging, I use EZ line. I actually got this recommended to me by a friend. He's another teacher working on the school close to mine, and he's a really good modeler, and I guess he's been doing it many more years than me, and he's made some amazing dioramas. But he recommended this thread to me, and once I picked it up, I'm never going back. As for the running rigging, this is superior since it stretches. So you can stretch quite a bit, and if you put a tiny bit of stretch on it, it will keep that stretch. It's not going to go slack as some of the other lines might do over time. And I used the one called Fine rope for my ship. The ship is the HMS Noya, and this is a ship that the British captured from the Danes at the Second Battle of Copenhagen in 1807. And soon after that, she was commissioned into British service. I really like the paint job, a little bit different paint job on this one, with those larger black fields at the top and the bottom, and a thinner yellow or baby puke streak in the middle. I actually spend no extra time on this model. I mean, sometimes I take the rigging much further than this, but I was in a hurry, or I am in a hurry still, since we're trying to get a few more third rates done for a big line battle coming up on the 15th of February. We're going to run this at 6,000 points. We haven't tried that before. My opponents is my brother and Marcus, who I fence with, but they have a little bit of an advantage since they're doing the Franco-Spanish. They have to do just half the ships each. I'm hoping I might have 16 of the line for this battle, but we'll see. Maybe it's just going to be 15, but I'm working hard. I will post the battle report here on the channel when it happens. Have some new ideas for that one. I'm going to be filming, first of all, filming in 4K from the side, and then also taking steals with the action camera straight from above, so I don't have to make those battle maps. That's gonna be automatic, I hope. However, being a little bit stressed, it made me miss out on something earlier in this one, and that's the lifts on the yardarms. I usually do that at the beginning, but now I ended up doing it at the end because, yeah, I was going too fast, and even with the tutorial. So, but they're in here. You can see it on the finished model. There's little triangles formed on top of each yard. So if you decide to add them early on. The stays will be a little bit fiddlier with them on, for sure, but it can be done. Also, using plastic masts from Warlord games, the Federate frame is good. I sometimes use it completely for my Federates. If you do, you might want to add like a 0.4mm brass rod as one of the threads or one of the lines going to the bowsprit, the ones further out, to add stability to it. Because otherwise I found that over time those lines the threads, they might lose tension because the threads are all pulling on the plastic. So by adding a solid brass rod there, like I've done in this, I'm showing this here, the HMS Minotaur model I made a while back, I did this. And that's going to add a lot of stability to that area of the ship, and the lines won't slacken. In this build, this is not a problem, since I used, I actually scratch built the bowsprit for this one, using brass rods. Many times nowadays I do most of the masts myself with brass rod, like scratch building and maybe using 3D printed parts for furled sails and so on, the fighting tops. But this time around, since it's one of the ships of the line, and it's not going to be most of the time a single model on the playmat or battle mat, I'm not going to spend that much time on that part. When these are in place and the glue has dried, add the lower topmast stays. I start by tying the thread around the main mast just under the fighting top. This is pretty much follows the instructions that you can find like a tutorial by Warlord games. The thread is run from the mizzen top yardarm to the mizzen top yardarm. I then glue it to the same yardarm, a little bit out, so it creates a little triangle when it run up to the mizzen topgallant yard. Use a dab of glue on each step, like a tiny dab of glue. You can paint this over later on, and also I tend to use a bit of ultra matte varnish just on top of the glue spots, and that's gonna take the shine right out of them, and they're not gonna show at all. So don't be worried about the glue, to be honest. We're at the mizzen topgallant, and now we run it to the main top, and then just before the fore fighting top. So main top, fore fighting top, and finally to the bowsprit. I run a second thread from just below the fighting top on the bowsprit, on the foremast to the bowsprit, and then this creates a little bit of a triangle. I've seen this in a I mean, it's in a lot of rigging manuals, and there's also a lot of era painting where this is. So the bowsprit have quite a few lines running to it, and those little triangles that you create with 2 lines coming from the same point on the foremast, I think it looks really good. So, and it can be done in the 1/700 scale, so there's no point like not doing it. Okay, time for the backstays. I used to drill holes in the boards for this. I didn't like the way this looked. I mean, very stable, but I didn't like the way it looked. I found Just gluing the thread to them works just fine. They hold in place with gel cyanoacrylate glue. It works. So small dab at the back of the board, and then a more generous dab underneath. And then wait for the glue to set completely before running it back up to the 2-gallon yard. You start with the missing, like I do here, and then you work your way forward. I found that the most easy. Be careful so you don't tie too hard when you end each with a knot up on top of the 2-gallon yard, because if you do that with the plastic ones, you can end up getting them like bending slightly backward in an unnatural way, and it's kind of hard to correct. You're gonna have to like redo the whole thread to get it right. So be careful with that. Yeah, and also watch where the thread goes. It has a tendency to go in front of the lower yards, so you know, before you tie it, make sure that the thread goes to the right place so you don't have to redo everything. It's happened to me many times, but you know, you learn. So here you can see how it looks when all these backstays are in place. And they also add a lot of stability to your mass, even at this scale. So they're really worth doing. It will add stability to your whole model. After the backstays, I do the rest of the standing rigging. The first ones are again pretty much like the Warlord Games tutorial. Mizzen to gallant, to main to gallant, to fore topmast, and then to the bowsprit. Don't forget to run a second thread from the fore topmast to the bowsprit. The next is from the main topgallant to the fore topgallant and then to the bowsprit. And a second thread also from the fore topgallant to the bowsprit. These two threads then go to the dolphin striker at different heights or different points, one at the middle and one at the lower point, and then back to the bowsprit. I think this it looks like a lot of historical paintings and illustrations, and then kind of looks good. I also run standing rigging to the spanker gaff and the spanker boom. So these ones I tie them to the mizzen mast, and then I just run them and glue them in place on the gaff and the boom with a dab of glue. 2 to the gaff and 1 to the boom. Actually the boom one is going to go on either side, and then the gaff is going to go down to the hull if you're going to do it historically correct. You can look at the illustrations and find how it's going to look, but I find this way is enough for my ships. And also I'm going to end up running a thread anyway for the ensign, yeah, it's called a ensign, down to the hull from this point, so it's going to be covered anyway. So for the ensign and the commissioning pennant, I use a metallic thread that I showed in the beginning of the video. It's very shiny. I glue that one with cyanoacrylate, so it's becoming a lot more stiff. And then I paint it brown using an acrylic marker. I also showed this earlier in the video. I like this stiffer thread for things like the ensign and the commissioning pennant, or if the ship is towing any boats or anything behind it, then I also use this line. For that, I run the thread for the ensign from the end of the spanker gaff to the inner corner of the hull by the stern lantern. The thread for the pennant is run along the mainmast, starting in the front and then going to the back and down in steps. I put a small dab of glue sometimes just to keep it where I want on the way down. I usually wait with attaching this until I have the main mast shrouds and ratlines in place. I use photo etch for the from various places, but most are from Atlantic models. On the bowsprit, I tie 3 knots underneath at each of the points where the thread comes down to the foremast. These are then run to the cathead via the bowsprit yard. Remember, it is all inspired by historically correct rigging, but it is not exactly that. I did it this way this time. Experiment and do what you think looks good, really, since they're so small. The most I've done was on the Constitution, and that I did like the historical one, and I think it has 5 of these lines. It looks really good from above, and again adds stability to your bowsprit. I use the EZ line to do 2 of the running rigging at this point. The one from the mizzen yard to the mainmast, and the one going from the bowsprit yard to the foremast. The final step is the running rigging. As mentioned earlier, I find the EZ line great for this. Be careful as it messes up easily, and when it gets in contact with the glue it really gets messy quick. So but it's easy to correct. Just remove it and redo it, and be careful. I failed quite a few times, and you can probably see it in this video. The advantages is that it stays tensioned over time, and it far outweighs any difficulties I find. Start with the mizzen top yard and the gallant yard. Attach the thread to the outer end of each. When it's completely dry, then you run it to the spanker gaff, the outer end of the spanker gaff, and then to the opposite yard. Don't tension it too hard. I mean, you don't want too much pressure on the gluing you did on the spanker gaff. And you do it on both. The main top yard and the gallant yard are the next. You run these threads via the stays like shown. So, and this looks really good, and it's looking kind of like the historical. So you just have to count 2 stays down from the yard, and then you run the thread to that stay and attach it with a tiny dab of glue to it. Don't tension these too much, because you'll end up getting a weird curve in your stay. I did it on the one going from the mizzen mainstay, and I had to attach a small piece of thread just to keep it in place. I mean, you won't see that thread very much, so I think that works. It can be a bit fiddly. Sometimes I won't attach the shrouds and the ratlines until the very end to help make these steps a little bit simpler, and the threads easier to run. Next, you do the 4 top yard and the gallant yard, and these also run to the stays as shown, and then attaching to the opposite side of the yard. Small dab of glue is needed to make sure that the thread attaches to the right point of the stay. And again, don't tension this too much, because then you end up with a weird kind of bend in your stays. Last, we do the foreyard and the main yard. The main yard line is run alongside the hull to the very back of it, and the fore is run to the bottom of the main shroud channels, like where the rat lines come down and touch. This is a good point. Once these are dry, I add a medium dab of glue to the thread, and then attach a second thread at this point. This is then run to a point on the hull a little front of the main threads. Different points. Do it where it looks good, and in this build I use the back of a gun and so on. Doesn't show later, so just find a good point to attach it. This is fiddly, this could take time, and be careful that you don't use too much glue, because you could easily do this at this point. Do this on both, and on both sides of course. Sometimes in an all-in build I will attach more rigging and also be more historically accurate. But for a game piece like this is, and one of the ship of my line, I find this is enough work. Sometimes I might add rat lines also to the top parts of the fore and mizzen masts. But you don't see this very much during a game, and to save time and also parts, because photo edge costs a bit. Many times I'll end up just doing the top parts of the rat lines for the main mast. I have a very thin thread, which I show. It's a 20 denier, really thin white thread. It's like working with spider's web, to be honest. I mean, I find it horrible to work with, so you don't attempt this unless you have a lot of patience. I used it in my HMS Surprise build, among others, for the bow lines. Or any like thinner lines. Like if you want another thinner type of line, you can use this. It is Also stretchy, so it won't break easily once you touch it, but gluing it is super fiddly, and getting it to the right point and running this thread is really hard. You're going to have to use gravity. You're going to have to point your model and use gravity to let it fall, because it really is falling like spider's web. So don't recommend doing any of that unless it's a showpiece, something that you're going to use for an exhibition or a diorama or something. If it's just a game piece, standing rigging, if you don't want to do too much, if you want more immersion and more lines, then do the running rigging as well. Many folks just choose to do the standing rigging and leave the running rigging out. And yes, this saves a lot of time on a game piece, which these ships really are, after all. I guess it's a matter of taste. For me, the rigging is part of the Napoleonic era, and these engines of marvel that they actually were, each ship. So I want to give that a bit of credit. And also, we find during games, a busy rigging is one of the things that could add a lot of life to a model when it's on that C mat or game board. It's like bringing it to life, giving it some action. Also giving the yards a twist, so they're like catching the wind, or giving the ship a bit of heel, or maybe both things, like tipping the ship a bit, like sanding it to make it heel a bit to one of the sides. It can also give a lot of life and action to your ship. So next time you do a ship, maybe you consider doing this. So this is a rundown of the way I did the rigging on this 1/700 scale model of HMS Neue. The hull was from Turner Miniatures, the mast and figurehead were from Warlord Games. I painted a little lion. I filed that figurehead to something different because the historical painting seems to have a red lion on the front there painted. So I did this one with the shield as the closest one. I think it looks okay. The thread, as I described earlier, are from different places: Warlord Games, EZ line, and then just normal bobbin thread and so on. Most of the photo edge is from Atlantic models. I also get photo edge from other places. I have a box with a lot of different photo edge, and then I just pick out what I need. But I can really recommend the rat lines from Atlantic models. For larger ships, I use the 1/500 to 1/550 or 600 scale rat lines, and then for smaller ones, the 1/600 to 1/700 scale rat lines. Can recommend them. You can find them online. The base is as usual clear acrylic, which I then paint on the underside with semi-transparent paints. I use inks and actually a green speed paint, an old green speed paint mixed together to get kind of a color matching our C mat. But being semi-transparent, it will actually adapt a bit to different mats, which is the whole point. And then I do the effects on top. I use stuff from Green Stuff World, like splash gel and sea foam on the top to create a little bit of effects there. And also this adds a little bit of life to the model, like some action. It's moving. Yeah. Any questions you may have about the rigging or any other part of the building and painting of these models, just post them in the comments below. And if you like the video and have not subscribed yet, please consider doing that. This channel is becoming more and more to me, and I really enjoy posting videos and so on, and it seems like some of you like it as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll be playing a large 6,000 point battle pretty soon here on the 15th of February 2025. That's just in a few weeks, and I'm gonna make that my next video. So the next video will be a battle report. If there's any other part of the ship or the painting that you would like a tutorial on, just let me know. They're a little bit more involved, I found. I never really did a tutorial, and as I said many times, I'm not super happy about my Swedish accent. That's why I've used the text to speech on my videos for a while now. I went back to this. I hope you could follow along and that I didn't mumble too much. So back to prepping and churning out third rates for this battle. I'm also working on a few commissions, which is really fun. So I'll be doing the US ethics from Warlord games as well at the same time. That will be a lot of fun. So I hope I see you all for that.